There we go. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. There we go. Okay. Now I got it. Now I got it. There's normal. Okay. Okay. There we go. Now I got it. Okay. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. There we go. Make sure I'm not zoomed in. That zooms in and out. All right. 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 Okay. There we go. Now I can raise this up a little bit. Raise the stick up a little bit so I'm not looking down, I'm looking up. There we go. Okay. Okie dokie. Now let's get right into it. Now we can truly begin the lecture in understanding the origins of law. Because if you don't understand the origins of law, then we're doomed. We're doomed. If it doesn't matter if I understand the origins of law, it matters that you understand the origins of law. Because it's one thing for one person to understand the origins of law. However, what I've found out, hey, how you doing, Josh? What I found, and you guys do me a favor, hit that like button at the top. There's a little thumbs up right there. You guys do me a favor, hit that like button real quick, and then drop down right here in the comments and let me know exactly where you guys are watching from. Let me know where you guys are watching from. I hate to start over on this, but I like to know who's in the room and where you guys are watching from. Am I educating Americans? Are you from Canada? Are you from Spain? Are you from Colombia? Where are you guys watching from? And that will help me understand. Yeah, it worked, Filthy. The way you have to do is you have to start your video sideways. If you start your video in a north-south orientation, then it'll end up filming in a north-south orientation. So, where are you guys watching from? Atlanta, Northern Georgia. Cool, thought so. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Rich in SoCal. Good to see you, Rich. I actually live in Southern California. I live in West Hollywood. Arizona, I'm in Arizona. I'm east of Tucson a little bit. So I'm here in Arizona myself. And I wonder if I can move that chat over to the right. Can I move it once it's there? I see. Okay, I'm just learning how to do this. And so I gotta get better at YouTube because obviously I need to spend the majority of my time here. We need to educate the masses. Listen, it doesn't matter, and where's everybody watching from? Let me know. So, okay, cool. So now, it's going to take a little bit of a time to build a following on this platform, and I know that. I understand that. There's going to be a little bit of a curve here as we push forward and we start to expand this base of understanding law and understanding America. And so there's going to be a little bit of a curve here, especially for me because I'm used to going to on TikTok. The rooms are extraordinarily big. There's lots and lots of people. Thousands of people come into the TikTok rooms, and so I'm going to have to learn how to adjust a little bit here as we push forward. So what we're talking about today is the origins of law, and I made a video last night called Natural Law is Not Racist. And if you guys did not see that video that says Natural Law is Not Racist, then I highly recommend that you watch that video because natural law is not racist. And so no matter how much people are going to say, oh, that's racist, it's simply not racist. John Locke was not a racist. John Locke did not own people. He didn't have any slaves. He was an Enlightenment thinker. And what does that mean exactly when I say an Enlightenment thinker? Does anybody know what, when I say an Enlightenment thinker, do you know exactly West Hollywood? New homeless capital. That's right, my friend. It's the new homeless capital. So does anybody know when I say Enlightenment thinker? Do you know exactly what that means? I know maybe you've heard the term before, but do you know what Enlightenment thinker means? It's almost like you could compare it to, and just type down right here, yes, I know what Enlightenment thinker means, or no, I do not know what Enlightenment thinker means, because then what that does for me is it lets me know the level of the crowd of exactly the knowledge base that you have. Because I can share a lot of information, but I don't want to talk over you or below you, and I don't want to talk at you, I want to talk with you. There's a very big difference in that, because if we don't open a dialogue, cool, we'll go ahead. Then Mitten State, write down right in here what you believe an Enlightenment thinker is, because then we can really start a dialogue back and forth. And that's the good part about some of the other platforms where if you have a small following and Right, transcends humanity. That's right, Rich. That's right, Rich. Raw, thumbs down. Hey, Raw, there's a lot of pages you can go to, brother. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of places you can go. There's a lot of things on YouTube. There's lots of things you can do. There's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's all kinds of, there's Facebook. You can go to all kinds of pages. But before you give me a thumbs down, maybe you should take a look at the quality of the content that I produce. And just take a look at that, and then let me know if it's still a thumbs down for you. But then again, you could be sent here by someone who has branded me something bad. So an enlightenment thinker, what an enlightenment thinker actually means is that someone who's going to say things that are outside of what the social norms are. And so if you go to John Locke, and he's born in 1632, and what makes him an enlightenment thinker, what makes John Locke an enlightenment thinker, is at that time when he's born in 1632, and then he comes of age around 1645, 1650. Right. So now what he's going to do, he's going to challenge the status quo. He's going to challenge the status quo, and he's going to say that not just kings should have the right to property, not just kings and princes and those in royalty should have the right to liberty, but all people should have the right to liberty. And so now what that means is that's an enlightened way of thinking. That's what enlightenment thinker means. When you say Galileo, he was an enlightenment thinker. He looked up at the stars and said, well, if the stars are here when I'm in the ocean, and then I move my boat 100 nautical miles north, then the stars are going to look different in the sky. And so he's enlightened in the idea that he has new ideas that are going to come to light. Enlightenment thinker, right? So, yeah, but that idea that every man has a castle, every man has his home, is a new idea, relatively new in the long stretch of history. Remember, we're only 2021 AD. So now John Locke's Enlightenment thinking happened when? In 1645, 1650, 1652? Remember, Montesquieu's book's going to be published in 1748 in French and then published in English in 1750. So 100 years pass from the time that John Locke has the Enlightenment thinking that we're all entitled to life, liberty, and property. And then 100 years later, the Spirit of Laws comes out, and that's where James Madison and Thomas Jefferson are going to plagiarize the books, The Spirit of Laws. The Spirit of Laws. And the Spirit of Laws is the fundamental piece that creates the checks and balances system that we live in today. We have a checks and balances system today because of Montesquieu's books, The Spirit of Laws. You see? And now this is an enlightened way of thinking that there should be checks and balances on power. Does it help a lot? Hey, yeah, you guys do me a favor, drop a thumbs up, hit that thumbs up button. I'm going to teach you guys a lot of stuff. I mean, what I have found out over the past year is that I do have an encyclopedia of information in my mind that I was walking around for a decade believing that other people knew the same shit that I did. I was walking around thinking that everybody knew the same things, that people knew these things. Because to me, remember, I'm a dumb jock who fights in a cage, right? So to me, I always thought that of course you guys know these things. If I know these things, well, you must know these things. That's literally how I thought, because you can't see outside the box of which you're planted in, right? I'll give you a real simple box scenario. You guys hit that like button. You guys hit your like button real quick. Hit that thumbs up button like that. I think you can just touch that thumbs up button for me if you would, please. Try to bring more people into the room. Try to bring more people into the room. And, to school to be a lawyer. Yeah, I'm going to end up going to Yale. I was actually supposed to be in Yale this time period now. I was supposed to be up there checking out the campus, but unfortunately my funding was cut off by some people within BLM who branded me horrible things, which is just not true. So now when we talk about enlightenment thinking, it's a new way to think. It's enlightened. You're going to offer ideas that are going to go against another very popular term is speaking truth to power, right? You guys have heard that before, speaking truth to power. Well, what exactly does that mean? Speaking truth to power means that these people up here who are going to be appointed, that this is all the Supreme Courts that we've had throughout the history of time. These people who are going to be appointed, what happens is these guys are speaking truth to power, but they're speaking truth to power in the monarch system where there's kings. And the monarch back in the day, they would hang you or cut your head off. And it happened quickly. It happened very quickly. So you have to understand that that's exactly how we got to where we are today, by these gentlemen speaking truth to power. Now, if you haven't read Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power, then it's a very good book, because it teaches you not only history, but it teaches you the fundamentals of understanding power. And that's why I always recommend that book, The 48 Laws of Power, if you have not read it. But what I wanted to talk about in depth today was the video that I made last night that's called Natural Law is Not Racist. And so why would I make a video that says natural law is not racist? And let's break down exactly what that means. What is natural law? We talked about this last night. Who's in the room? You guys drop down, let me know in the comment section who's in the room, because this is how I do the live sessions when I do them. So let me know who's in the room. Drop down where you guys are at, where you're from, so that I can kind of get a barometer for where everybody is watching this from. And this is just a little bit of a different format for me, so I'm not quite used to it yet. But I will get it down, I promise. I'll get better and better at this. It's just going to take me a little bit of a learning curve to understand how the YouTube Live works in comparison with the TikTok Live. Georgia. Okay, Georgia. I'm going to be heading through Georgia. I'm actually going to Arkansas. I'm going to Arkansas. I got to go over there for some legal stuff. So I'll be heading through Arkansas. Still have filthy fingers, still here in Arizona. Great. So how many people watched that video last night that I made, or that came out this morning at 6 a.m. that says natural law is not racist? New Jersey in the house. I got a friend up there in New Jersey named Pito. The name of his channel is It's Pitovich. That's the name of his channel. So I'm going to be heading up to New Jersey over the next couple weeks. I'm going to be traveling all through the South and through the East Coast. I'm not going to go to the East until to the Northern California, the Northern East Coast, until it gets a little bit warmer. Yeah, the video I made called Natural Law is Not Racist. It's very important that we understand that when you talk about natural law, you're talking about your right to self-preservation. Now, so I talked about this last night, but I after I made the video, I figured out that there's a better way to explain it to you guys so that you would understand what I've learned, and I could be able to share this information with you in the most efficient way possible. So when we talk about natural law, we're talking about John Locke's theory of natural law. Now, John Locke's theory of natural law is just going to speak truth to power to the kings and the royalty, that commoners have the same rights that kings and princes have, and that royalty has, and that the elite privileged have. And that's what John Locke is going to do. And so when you get to John Locke's theory of natural law, and this is being spread through all the commoners all over England, all over France, they're learning that, holy smokes, we have the right to have private property, we have the right to be free, we have the right to defend our own lives. And this is a very important concept, right? And this is a concept that is not being shared. It's simply not being shared. Matter of fact, the kings and the monarchs and the royalty are telling the commoners that you are a peasant, and they literally identify as being a peasant. And if you've watched some of the stuff I teach, I often call us all peons, because unless we're in mass numbers, we really don't count as much. And then you can get into what's called the rule of recognition. So when you take a bunch of us, when you take a bunch of people together and you put us all in one unit, then you get what's called the rule of recognition. Does anybody know what the rule of recognition is? Just type that in there. I know what the rule of recognition is. I do not know what the rule of recognition is. Just let me know if you guys know what that means. Yes, I know what the rule of recognition means. No, I do not know what the rule of recognition means. I mean, just type it right out on your phone so that I know how many people actually understand what the rule of recognition is. Don't know. Mitten doesn't know. Anybody else? So there's one person. We got 12 people in the room. Anybody else doesn't know? Anybody else know what it is? No, do not know. Don't know. Don't know. Don't know. There's Dustin. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate you guys chiming in. It really helps me a lot. It really, because then I can start to understand who's in the room. So the rule of recognition is when the mass of people either recognize a rule or a law that is just. And the easiest way to understand, the most simple example that I can give of the rule of recognition is when you go here and you're talking about the late 1800s and the early 1900s, what's the rule of recognition? The rule of recognition is that if you are a black person and you get too far out of line, you will be lynched. You can't talk to white people, you'll be lynched. Another simple one that doesn't have to do with racism is in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, because horses didn't get to Americas until the 1850s, and they were brought over by a guy named Jose Hernandez. I just researched this the other day, so it's still fresh in my head. But when the horses got here, and then we expanded our country west as we stole Texas, and as we stole Florida, and as we stole New Mexico, and as we stole California, we literally stole these different states from the Native Americans and from the Mexicans. We stole those states. And so what happened was, as you traveled west through America, what happened was when you had a horse, there wasn't another outpost for 100 miles, 200 miles. So if someone stole your horse, then that would be killing you, killing your family. There was homesteaders. And as you guys know, if you still travel through the west, if you travel through Arizona, if you travel through New Mexico, you're going to find out that there's still not, it's still really the middle of nowhere. You don't really get to population until you get east of Texas. Because these areas over here in the west are still very sparse. There's still lots of space over here. And so when you talk about the rule of recognition, you start to get this understanding that if you steal a person's, and I always say a man's horse, because that's what I read in history books, but if you steal a man's horse throughout the west, then what happens is you're going to kill that man, you're going to kill his wife, you're going to kill his kids, because there's not another outpost for 50 miles, and if there's no water, you can't get from post to post in the 1850s, 1860s, 1870s. So if you steal a man's horse, then you're killing him, right? So the rule of recognition is, and by the way, this is not a law. It becomes a law later, but the mass of people, the peons, get together and say, look, if you steal someone's horse, you get hung, right? And it's very common, and you've heard this before in history, that if you steal a man's horse in the West, that you'll be hung. Now, was that a law? No, it was not. It eventually becomes a law that stealing horses gets you hung, but it's actually put forth by the rule of recognition, that the people of America have recognized that if you steal someone's horse, that you essentially are attempting murder or literally killing that person because they won't have access to water. And so the people in the West start to say, well, it's real simple. You take someone's horse, you die. And then the government hears about this, and so then the government passes legislation that says if you steal a man's horse, you die. And then what happens later? What happens later? Pretty soon, there's so many outposts through the West that they're only 5 or 10 miles apart. So stealing a man's horse might certainly cause him an inconvenience, and you're still going to go to there's all kinds of punishments back then, and we still have cruel and unusual punishment all the way up until the 1920s, 1930s. We're still doing very cruel and unusual punishment all the way up into the 1920s and 1930s. And as you know from the lynching graph here, that cruel and unusual punishment is a very common, normal thing in the United States of America. So then what happens here is it becomes a law that stealing a man's horse, you put him to death, right? Firing squad, all kinds of disgusting ways. And what do they call those things where they stick your wrists and your ankles inside of the wooden block, and then they leave you out in the sun? What's that called? I can't remember. They also put you in a box, and then they put you in a box where you can't move and you're laying flat. It's horrific what they did to people, all the way up until the early 1900s. So now right here, now pretty soon though, as we move into the 1900s, stealing a man's horse is still a law that you'll be put to death. But then the people themselves start to recognize that if you steal a man's horse, you might be a scoundrel, but you should not be put to death, right? And so the law changes because the people recognize, using the rule of recognition, that you no longer need to be killed if you steal a man's horse. You might go to prison, you might get tortured, you might get punished, but we don't need to kill you for stealing a man's horse, right? And so that's the rule of recognition working both ways. The first way is the people enact that if you steal a man's horse, you die. And then the government passes a law that says if you steal a man's horse, you die. And then pretty soon, as we get enough outposts throughout the West, then the people start to say, hey, don't kill him just because he stole a horse, but let's punish him, make him a slave, do all these different things. You see, so that's called the rule of recognition. And that's what I'm trying to get to here, where pretty soon the people of this country start to recognize that reasonable suspicion is not probable cause. We're no longer going to respond to you when a cop says, hey, that's reasonable suspicion. Because now you have videos. There's a guy on YouTube named Street Cop. Street Cop, his videos, you want to see how stupid police are? Go watch Street Cop's videos. This guy is a blithering moron. I mean, he literally talks out loud and shows what a moron he is, because police have zero skills. They can't produce, they can't write, they can't dance, they can't sing. Police have zero skills. If you had skills, you wouldn't be a cop. Because if you had skills, you wouldn't sign up to take people to a freaking dungeon, right? That's literally how it works. You take people to a dungeon because you don't have any other skills other than know how to follow orders. But we get back to the rule of recognition here, and what happened was when Lyndon Johnson and Earl Warren get together to create Terry versus Ohio the day after MLK Jr. is assassinated, then people start to recognize, because of the Supreme Court, then what happens is they then say that reasonable suspicion is a valid thing. And of course, all the white people go along with it, which I just find to be atrocious. I find it to be atrocious. I really, really do. I really do. That so many of my ancestors, because my German-Irish family's been here since the Revolutionary War, we came over on the Mayflower. We trace it back to my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. Her name was Sarah. And then we traced my family lineage all the way back from the Mayflower to where we are today. So that means that my family was complicit in allowing these horrific things to happen here. And so we have to try to get back to a place where we have liberty and freedom for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America with liberty and justice for all. But that's not how it's gone at all whatsoever. That's not how it's gone at all. Not even close. Not even remotely close, right? We haven't had with liberty and justice for all for everybody. We simply have not, right? We have not. I mean, am I wrong on that? Does anybody believe that we've had liberty and justice for all? Does anybody think that? Because we have not. We have not. And so we're watching these racist laws be passed, Terry versus Ohio, and the silence from the white majority is not only deafening. If you guys have not seen Overturn Terry, I put in there little clips from interviews from people in the 1960s that show that we were just so complicit. Okay? The pledge should come with a disclaimer. Yeah, it absolutely should. It absolutely should. And that's how we're living in the tyrannical state of which we're living in today, because we allowed laws to be passed against people of color. And now, as you know, what does the cop say? Hey, let me see some ID. I'm suspicious of you. And so we have to collectively, what I've taught people on TikTok, and I'll teach the same thing here, when you hear, hey, I'm reasonably suspicious, you reply to that cop. Reasonable suspicion is a construct of institutional racism. Because not everything is racist. As you know, I made the video last night saying that the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict was not racist. It was based on the fundamentals of natural law and the social contract failing. And by the way, you know, I read this last night and I was reading, because I always research constantly. John Locke said that if the social contract fails, we should overthrow the government. I mean, that's what he says. You can look it up yourself. John Locke says that when the rule of law fails, it is time to overthrow the government. That's what he says. Now, I'm not for violence. I'm not for a revolution. I'm for peacefully protesting, assembly, petitioning, and then us changing the rule of recognition based on the massive amount of numbers that we put together. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. Is that you and I together create a mass amount of numbers to be able to change this country to the place where it should be. Remember, James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, they did not write a document. Well, Simona just chimes in and says the verdict would have been different. You know, the criminal justice system has been inherently racist. But Simona, I don't think you saw the video that I produced. I don't think that you did. And I would recommend that you watch that, even if you leave this live here and you watch that video called Natural Laws Not Racist. Simona, if you don't understand that, right? If you don't understand that the natural law is not racist, then you're going to continue to listen to talking heads. On MSNBC, CNN, Fox, you're going to continue to listen to talking heads who do not educate you to the fundamentals of law that our country is based upon. Now, is the criminal justice system racist? 100%. 100%, right? But the Rittenhouse verdict was not based on racism. And this is what was so frustrating. So you watched it, Simona. Well, then we can agree that black people definitely have a way different outcome when it comes to, because listen, what do they always say? Just go to court and it's gonna, get a fair shake in trial. Is that what's happening? Are we getting a fair shake in trial? Are we getting a fair shake in trial? Is that what's happening? Because that's not what's happening, right? We don't have the industrial prison complex that we have today because you're getting a fair shake in trial. You're not getting a fair shake. You're not getting Simona, that's not true. Simona, that's not true. Simona, that's not true. They do too apply. As a matter of fact, one of the best marksmen in the world is a black guy who was a representative of the NRA. I think they just got rid of him for obvious reasons because of the social pressure and the garbage that goes on in our culture. But Simona, if you continue to believe that the law will not work for you, then you will not have the law work for you because you will not work to have the law work for you. You will continue to perpetuate this idea that everything is racism, and if we just say racism, 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 that the world's going to become a better place, and it's not. And it's simply not. It's simply not, right? If we continue to say racism, 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 and we don't actually go after the origins of law and how the laws were created, then we're never going to get ahead. As long as, and I'm not trying to be mean to you at all, Simona, I appreciate you coming in. As long as we continue to say that the law doesn't work for everybody and we don't fight to get the law. I mean, I can give you simple examples here, right? I can give you very basic examples through history. W.E.B. Du Bois. Did anybody look up yesterday exactly who he petitioned? I'm not going to give you the answer. Simona, I want you to look up. Who did W.E.B. Du Bois petition and how successful was he? By petitioning the government through using the law. Simona, are you still here? So did you look up what W.E.B. Du Bois did? Did you look up who he petitioned? We need to use the law that was meant to be used. That's right. And I kind of got sidetracked because Simona said something, but I want you guys to tell me exactly who W.E.B. Du Bois petitioned and what successes he had by petitioning that president. You see? So what I'm trying to say to Simona here and to anybody else who doesn't understand the fundamentals of the rule of law, he used his First Amendment right to petition. Okay? Yes, of course they are, Simona. Simone, I'm so sorry. I hope I'm not saying your name incorrectly. I'm not trying to. Of course the judges who are all white boomers, of course, and even the black judges who are boomers are completely, right? They're terrible. They're horrific, right? Our country's not really going to be better until the boomers die off. I'm sorry to say that because my mother's a boomer, okay? Yeah, I mean, Josh. So Josh, you can get lost in the drama of the culture and of the politics of the culture. But the truth is that if we don't get back to understanding the laws, the rule of recognition, and how to use liberty to petition the government, then we're never going to get ahead. So did anybody look up who W.E.B. Du Bois petitioned, who was the president, and the successes that he had petitioning the president using the current structure that we have? John Brown said the golden rule is that all men are created equal. And so John Brown, when he asked Frederick Douglass to come with him to go attack Harper's Ferry and attack General Lee in Virginia, Frederick Douglass said, "No, I'm not going. I'm not going. You're going to die, John Brown." But John Brown said the golden rule is that all men were created equal. And I'm willing to die for that. And he did. And as a matter of fact, when he was brought to the gallows, he did not weep. He was left in a cage for a month before they hung him because the South was very weary of hanging a hero from the North. They were very weary of it because they knew that it could. Why he did that was because of the Dred Scott holding of 1857. Okay? Right, you got it right. That is what I'm saying. Believe me, I teach. I mean, if you watch the video, I teach the history of institutional racism. If you think that I don't know that black people are treated unfairly in this country, you are mistaken. I am not saying that they're not treated unfairly. They certainly are, especially, and the entire thing is the criminal justice. You're still going to have racist towns. You're still going to have white people who are racist until this boomer generation dies off. We're not going to be able to change those racist people. Some of them are never going to change. I'm from a town that has a lot of racism in it because it's an all-white town. And some of my friends I grew up with are still racist to this day. They'll tell me they're racist, right? So now what happens? Now John Brown goes in and he attacks Harper's Ferry. He's taken to the gallows and he does not weep. He walks up to the gallows like a man and gets hung, or like a badass, because women are badasses too, right? So now what do we get to? What do we get to? We're going to get to the rule of law coming forth by the Civil War, when people are willing to fight and die. If you guys have not read Harriet Beecher Stowe's book called Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is going to be published in 1852, Susan B. Anthony is a big pusher of Uncle Tom's Cabin, and she gets the white people to read Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. That is the book that single-handedly got the thinking of the northern white men to be willing to fight and die in a civil war. You follow? So now all of these proponents going on here, what's going on? What's really happening here? What's happening is white America is standing up against racism using the rule of law. Using the rule of law. You follow what I'm saying to you? Using the rule of law. So, Simone, we have to work within the rule of law if we're going to create change, because if we try to fight this government physically, we're going to lose. We're going to lose, and we're going to lose badly. And we can't do that. We absolutely cannot do that. We can't do it. We can't do it. You're going to get everybody killed if you do. You're going to get everybody absolutely killed. And so we can't do that. We have to do it through the channels that were created, through our right to petition. Did anybody look up who W.E.B. Du Bois petitioned? What did he petition and what did he petition for? Can anybody tell me that? W.E.B. Du Bois, which president did he petition and what exactly did he get out of it? Right? And how many presidents did he petition? Simone, I'm on your side. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Simone or Simona. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Remember, I'm on your side. The name of my website is Delete Laws, and right when you open it says Defining Institutional Racism on a Timeline. So certainly don't think that I'm in any way, shape, or form. If you guys don't have my digital poster, it's $20. If you don't have the $20, just hit me up on an email. I'll give it to you for free. I also have a $99 version and a $135 version. I constantly have to try to get some funds coming in, because I am upside down still to this day because of cancel culture. Because of cancel culture. Because of cancel culture, my friends. And then here's my cup of coffee fund here. If you guys are so inclined and you learn anything at all, please pick me up a cup of coffee. These are my cup of coffee funds right here. Take a screenshot. Take a screenshot, take a screenshot. Is that backwards for you or is that forwards for you guys? Because to me it's backwards. Hopefully for you guys it is. This is my cup of coffee fund. Don't kill yourself, but a cup of coffee would be great if you guys learn absolutely anything from me, and I do appreciate your support. Thank you so much, I appreciate that. And this is how I've done this on TikTok since June, and so I'm just going to continue to do the same thing. I'm going to continue to do the same thing because this is what I do for a living. This is my only form of income. I don't have any other income. This is what I do. This is what I do. This is what I do. And I'm not going to do anything else. It's forward. Does that mean forward? Does that mean that it's proper? You can read it? Is that what that means? You guys can read that? Because to me, I was reading that backwards. Could you guys see that? Was that in proper format? Can you guys read the writing? Because to me, this is backwards. To you guys, can you read that? Is that normal to you? Good. Okay, cool, Rich. Okay, cool. So YouTube doesn't show it to me, but it is 100% readable. So yeah, so now as we start to move forward, so now what's going on? What is going on? So now on the wall graphic here, and on the graphic on the poster, as you can see, you have the presidents listed here, which year they were president, what time they were, which party they were, and then down here you have the lynching graphic, so you can see which year the lynching happened. This is the white people being lynched, these are the black people being lynched. And so when you go down this graphic, you can start to, then this is what's going to create conceptual analysis for you. Because you look at who's lynched in which year, and then you look at who the president was, and this is going to be a little bit off because of how I had to make it. But if you go to, Theodore Roosevelt, 1901 to 1909, William McKinley, 1897 to 1901, and then Grover Cleveland is president twice in two different time periods with Benjamin Harrison between him. So from 1885 here with Grover Cleveland coming down the line all the way into Woodrow Wilson here in 2013. Now let's take a look at the lynching graph and see the correlation. So we're going to go back here, Grover Cleveland. We're going to start this in 1885, and we're going to come to an end in 1921 with Woodrow Wilson. And so now when you take a look at your lynching graph, and we go back to 1885, 1885, you're gonna have Grover Cleveland, who's going to be president here, and take a look at the lynchings. Take a look at the 110, 74, 86, right? And then after you have the lynchings here, after Grover Cleveland, you're going to have Benjamin Harrison, who's going to be president from 1889 until 1893. So now take a look. The lynchings slightly drop here, and so you can start to correlate who the president was with what the responsibility they had and what they did as far as who was doing the lynchings, right? And so when does the lynching really, truly drop? The lynchings aren't going to really take a big drop until the early 1900s. And so when you get here and you get in 1904, right here, now for the first time we're getting below the 60s in here, in 1907. And who's the president in 1907? It's Theodore Roosevelt. So Theodore Roosevelt has the first big drop because we go from the hundreds over here to when Theodore Roosevelt was president in 1901 to 1909. And then when William Howard Taft gets into the presidency, for the first time in the history, you're going to drop down to one white person being lynched, and that's in 1913, and that's at the end of Howard Taft's presidency. And so you start to say, well, what exactly happened? How did that happen? And so then if you go up and you take a look at the laws that are being passed in 1913, when you take a look at the laws that are being passed in 1913, well, what happens is you have the 1911 Sullivan Act that's going to strip guns away from black people. And the Sullivan Act is passed primarily and only for black people. As a matter of fact, Justice Buford on the Florida Supreme Court will later say out loud that the 1911 Sullivan Act and the 1934 National Firearms Act are both intended only to be applied to black people. But when that happens, the lynchings drop, right? So I'm just giving you guys the absolute data so that your brain can start to create conceptual analysis and you can start to put it in a better context for yourself, right? And that's the reason why I send off this graphic. I sent off 30 of these today. I sent off 30 free digital downloads today. I sold one. So it was 30 to 1 today. I woke up, 30 requests for graphics with one person who bought one, and I sent off the 30. To people so that you guys can start to understand conceptual analysis of how the laws have worked. Because it's really easy to see right here in 1908, 1909, 1910, this is the lynchings finally drop here, 1912, 1913. Okay? So now we're at single digits for white people being lynched, and this is the first time in 1906 down here where white people being lynched is dropping dramatically. Because this is the first time it goes down to 3 and 3 in 1906, 1907. And who's president in 1906, 1907 is Theodore Roosevelt. So Theodore Roosevelt's administration was plagued with scandals, but he was able to get people to stop lynching white people, but not black people. And so then as you go down the line here, when does the black people lynchings truly start to drop? It doesn't really start to drop until we get to 1924. This is when black people finally, the lynchings slow down dramatically. So we're in high double digits in lynchings. 1953, we have 53 here in 1920, 59, 52, 29 in 1923. So who's president? Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge comes in and he drops the lynchings in half. Calvin Coolidge drops the lynchings in half. Okay? So now you have to start to recognize, well, who was Calvin Coolidge? Calvin Coolidge was president here from 1923 to 1929. And so then when Herbert Hoover comes into office in 1929, the lynchings are still dropping for black folks, which is a good thing, And when do they spike again? They spike again in 1933. So who's president in 1933? It's Herbert Hoover. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt's going to come in, and the lynchings really they kind of start to drop, but you're not looking at the numbers that should be here. There should be better numbers here, but there's not. And the reason why is because Franklin Delano Roosevelt was really actually deeply racist. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was known as the greatest president in U.S. history, was the only man to build concentration camps in America, and he was deeply racist. He cut black people out of the New Deal that he created. And Franklin Roosevelt was famous for fighting the Supreme Court and saying, you guys are not going to decide how it goes. You're going to pass my New Deal regulations. But then they do, but they don't, because it's a layer cake. And here's the way the layer cake works. Elitists control government, government controls policing. So it's a layer cake. Elitists, government, policing. So the three of them work together. The three of these work together. You have the elitists up here that control the government. The government controls the policing. And so now you start to understand that when you talk about policing, you talk about the lowest form of the tip of the spear of the government. It's being controlled by the elitists who are telling the government what to do. You follow? You follow? So, yeah. And I know I'm giving you guys a lot of data in a lot of different areas, but if you take it in and you learn it, then what happens is your brain puts those plot points together and you start to get conceptual analysis created. Remember, I didn't just learn all these things and then I just knew everything. I learned little pieces of data the whole way, and then my brain was able to put it together in a bigger way. In a bigger way. In a bigger way. So listen, I'm going to jump, guys. I got to go. I got to help my mom do something, and I got to get out for a little while. But I want to jump on for a little while on YouTube today. I'm going to do an hour or so every day on YouTube until we build a big enough following. You guys, please take the last video that I made that's only 11 minutes long that says that the natural law is not racist. And please share that on your Facebook page, your YouTube page, on your Twitter. Rich, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for learning. I really appreciate you guys learning. It matters to me that you guys learn things and we learn them together. And I'm always willing to learn from you guys. If you guys have any data, you can send me any data you come up with. If you guys do not have my digital poster and you didn't buy it, cool. Get it anyway. Send me an email and say, I want it for free. I'll give it to you for free. If you bought it for 20 bucks, thanks. I really do need your support. But at the same time, as long as you're willing to learn, I'm willing to teach, right? I'm willing to teach. You don't have to give me a dime. If you're willing to learn, I will teach you. I will teach you. If you guys can pick it up, definitely buy it. I'm fucking dying, baby. I am fucking dying. These people came in last month, Jeremy and Shauna. I literally was not going to make my car note, and they put up 60% of my car note, 70% of my car note. So I was just so super grateful. I was so super grateful. I couldn't believe it. I literally broke down in tears because I wasn't going to make my car note because of cancel culture, and Shauna and Jeremy came in and completely and utterly just changed my whole paradigm right there in a moment. They called me and said, how are you going to make your note? And I said, I'm not. And then they sent me the money. It was just so hard. It was so hard. It gets me choked up now. I don't want to cry again. I'm not going to cry. So listen, thanks you guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. DeleteLaws.com with a Z. Spread that last video that I shared, the natural law is not racist. Send me that DM. Andrew Coffey, the 4th, found not guilty. Send me that on a DM or send me that through an email, please. And I got to help my mom. So thanks, guys. I appreciate your time. God bless you. God bless America. And keep fighting the good fight until we get the fight won. We don't stop the fight until the fight is won. You never stop a fight until the fight is won. Trust me, man. I've been in literally physical dog fights with people in a cage and even outside of the cage. If you stop fighting before the fight is won, lights go out. Lights go out. Okay? So remember that. Love you guys. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys on the next one. Later.